West Virginia's Attorney General suing Apple, alleging the company has failed to prevent child sexual abuse materials from being stored and shared via its iOS devices and iCloud services. Republican J.B. McKenzie accusing Apple of prioritizing, I should say, privacy branding and its own business interests over child safety. In a statement, Apple spokesperson telling CNBC, protecting the safety and privacy of our users, especially children, is central to what we do. The company pointed to parental controls and other features as an indication of its commitment to provide what it was safety, security, and privacy to users. Joining us right now to talk about all of this is West Virginia's Attorney General. Good morning to you. I got to tell you, I was surprised by this case because, you know, the reputation that Apple's always had has been around safety and security. And so to understand that all of these images are on their systems and are not being checked, for example, the same way that apparently even a Google or a Meta is checking them, I think was eye-opening for a lot of folks.
Yeah, so first things first, my kids have Apple products. I'm actually being broadcast to you live right now on an iPad. And I think Apple in their statement has kind of missed the mark here. And the reason is that, yes, I actually do appreciate the parental controls that they have on Apple devices. And I appreciate that they give parents the ability to change what it is that their children can see and how often they can see it. But that misses the total point. The point here is that they're also protecting child predators who are storing images of children, which obviously weren't taken with their consent because they're children, over the law enforcement need to have access to these images, to find the people that are taking and distributing these pictures and putting them in jail. So there's really two very distinct things there, right? Yes, it is very, very good that Apple gives parents options for how their children use their phones, but it's very, very bad that Apple does not allow the FBI and our federal law enforcement partners access into these cloud-based products to find the very child predators who are both taking these pictures and distributing them.
But how much of that is a function of the encryption program that they've established? And that becomes a larger question, maybe a philosophical one and practical one, about encryption unto itself.
Yeah, I don't think that that's an unreasonable way to state that. And Apple, because of what you just said, so Apple is the only one of these, only people in the marketplace that have an end-to-end encryption system. So what that also means is that Apple has to, they have to deal with all of the issues that happen within their system, meaning there is no third party. And so Apple has made a conscious decision that they're going to put encryption and privacy ahead of what we know is one of the growing and most important legal challenges that we have in this country, which is an enormous amount of child predators who, quite frankly, and one of the reasons why I think this case is so important for West Virginia is we have an enormous child welfare problem here. And kids that come in and out of foster care whose parents suffer from substance use disorder are so much more likely to be trafficked and to be abused and to have pictures of themselves on the internet that are something that are horrible and illegal and indicative of some of the worst crimes that you can think of. So, you know, here in West Virginia, we have an enormous vulnerable population of children for this that fall under this category. And so we think it is incredibly important that Apple meet our law enforcement partners halfway. And like you said, in the marketplace, when you look at Google and Meta, they produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 million child sexually explicit materials to the FBI just in 2003. By contrast, Apple only provided somewhere in the neighborhood of 700. And so when you look at 35 million compared to 700, you know, we know that images are there. We know that people are using Apple as a privacy product to get around these laws. And we simply want Apple to become a partner with us and with law enforcement to make sure that the people who are taking and disseminating these pictures are prosecuted.
Have you had conversations with Apple about this?
I have had some very tertiary conversations with the Apple representative here in West Virginia, who happens to be a really good friend of mine. And, you know, this isn't one of these cases that's about some specific animus towards a corporation. This is about protecting children. And this is about making sure that Apple is a partner in this fight against child exploitation, which has exploded in this country over the last 10 years.
Is there a solution in your mind? And I'm now just projecting onto this conversation what I imagine Apple would say, which is once we go down the road of trying to encrypt everything, there is no way for us to see the actual images. And therefore, yes, we have chosen privacy and encryption over just about everything else, but it's a one-way street, meaning that there is no compromise in between. Do you know of an approach that could allow for such a compromise? Meaning, and I don't know this, but does Meta with WhatsApp, and I know that on WhatsApp you can have, I believe, the material encrypted, how that works, for example?
Yeah, so there are a myriad of AI functionalities that can scan and review pictures when they're uploaded. And what Apple has said is that they don't want to be scanning any of their users' images, while Meta and Google have said the exact opposite. And what we know is that through blockchain technology, you can do all of this filtering anonymously, meaning that nobody who has images that aren't illegal would be affected. And I think that the data really bears that out. Like I just said, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 million images were flagged by Meta and by Google. And so they have technology that works, that their users don't find obtrusive, and helps to make sure that we're finding all of these images, right, scrubbing them, and prosecuting the people that took them.
And so what does your pal say when you tell him you guys should be running an AI algorithm over the images as they're getting uploaded?
He says that Apple has a commitment to privacy that outweighs my commitment to child safety. And so that's why we're here at an impasse, is that I believe that the privacy that Apple advertises and signals to the users that you can take any picture you want and no one will ever come to your house and arrest you, I think that philosophy should be secondary to making sure that the children of this country are safe and the people that abuse them are prosecuted.
And then my final question for you before we go. Before you brought this case, had you had any conversations with other states about them joining in this case with you?
Yeah, so this is a topic that has been sort of being batted around in a myriad of legal circles. But, you know, West Virginia is a place where we like to lead. And I'm not somebody who's scared to be first. And I think this is a wildly important topic and a lawsuit that will drive societal change in an enormously positive way. And I think there'll be some attorney generals who follow in our footsteps and bring this case as well.